every time I come here, there's a sort of a sadness and sort of an appreciation or gratitude for all the friends that I have here and all of the people that I've taken care of that have been here. I've had over 50 patients over the years. This is my 10th year of taking care of patients that are struggling with memory loss, and the 5th with Parkinson's. And as you know, I've taken care of a lot of your friends, and it's been a real privilege to do that. There's a lot of ghosts here for me, a lot of guys and women that we were really close to. And I get kind of goosebumps when I think of all those bunch of people. I do want to dedicate this. I'll get a little choked up here. My mother-in-law is Ann Babcock. She's 102 years old. And if she's over in the Stewart Center, and we're going to film this so she can hear it. But she has been one of my biggest supporters. Anybody that says that mother-in-laws, Ronald Reagan's joke was that your definition of mixed emotion is watching your mother-in-law drive off a cliff in your brand new Cadillac. But I don't have those feelings at all. I love my mother-in-law, and she has been my biggest supporter throughout my life. So this is for you, Aunt Ann. I only get nervous 2 times in my life, and that's when I'm playing golf and when I'm cooking steak. Those are the only 2 times. But today I'm a little nervous for 2 reasons. One is that this is the first time that I'm going to talk about this book that I've just finished called Late Fragment. And it's the subtitle is Notes on the End of Lives. And the second reason why I'm nervous is because Mary does not like to come and hear me talk. And she said that this morning she was coming. Where are you, Mary? All right, there she is. So I think she's here to support me because she thinks I'm going to lay an egg. So thank you for support, Mary. All right. I want to change it up a little bit because tonight or this afternoon what we're going to do is we're going to have a little combination. The first book that I wrote is called Much Abides, and it is a survival guide for aging lives. It is predominantly focused on the transition from careers to retirement and how I saw my friends struggle with this and how I saw lives that were rich and just exciting, and then they couldn't make the jump. And so that was one of the reasons why I sat down and wrote that book. I never had intended to be a writer, but then with my career changing and taking care of people losing their memories and seeing all of this sort of disease and this courage unfold, almost made me write it. I was almost forced to write it, and I wrote it in a short amount of time, and it just came out. The second book is called Late Fragment, and we're going to talk about where that term comes from, and it's called Notes on the End of Life. And the Late Fragment is about a time in our lives where people disappear. And I have become, and I'm going to read to you a little bit about what I said in the introduction, and I'm going to read certain amounts of stuff that I've written and try to give you an idea of where I'm going in this book. The idea for the book began soon after the first book was published. I was invited to speak on the book at a retirement center here in my hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina. I knew this audience well. This would be a mixture of longtime friends, medical colleagues, and patients. Some of the patients would be from my first career as a cardiovascular surgeon, and others would be patients of my current practice, caring for patients with dementia and those caring for them. I would look forward to seeing these individuals and sharing the intimacy that only a surgeon who operated on them over 30 years ago or a physician who was involved with the daily struggle against memory loss would understand. I was preparing the talk, and it was apparent that this group was way beyond the scope of much of ours, long past the transition from career to retirement. When I projected forward and looked into the faces of that prospective crowd, I saw individuals in their mid to late 80s and early 90s whose lives had new, urgent concerns. The reality of these lives were limits forced on them by age. Those limits differed from person to person, some physical, some mental, but the losses varied from simple effects of aging, slowing in thought and action, to devastating, I think it just went off, didn't it? All right. Sorry. The most devastating were the loss of a spouse or an adult child. At least half were now caregivers for a spouse, which meant they not only had their own limits, but had to deal with the accelerated and relentless decline of someone they loved. The loss of mobility was often matched with decline of will. I became aware of common threads in each of these groups, and the limitations altered their passion for life and their view of the future and relationships with family and friends. This phrase and the people in it deserved a deeper look. So I ended with this. I have spent the last 2 years of my life living daily with the individuals in the late fragment. Their lives have dominated my thoughts. I know these individuals, what they fear and what they hope. I know what questions to ask and what their answers mean. I have an instinct for the neglect, the loneliness, and the despair. I have been educated in what works and what makes it work. What started out as a long, arm's length, semi-intellectual pursuit to better understand my patients and their caregivers has ended in an intense, almost suffocating personal trek to understand the deeper meanings of life. I have two aspirations for the book that all involved the children, families, colleagues, and the people next door will understand the challenges faced by my soulmates in the late stages of life. That those aging individuals be approached with honor for the lives that they have led. All involved will develop strategies to ensure the time left is dignified and, if possible, pleasant. That individuals who are living it don't give up. I want them to find new ways to remain vital. At this point, I confess that I'm not exactly sure where this journey is going to end. Let's just start with trust. Please trust me to have done the research and never soften the potential impact those facts may have on the reader. More important, I need to have your trust that I would never have started this book unless I thought I could deliver on the promise of making this late fragment of life not just tolerable, but worthy of the lives that preceded. I need to trust that you will be open and sincere in your involvement and desire to see new paths and be willing to walk down one. Enough said, let's go. So that's where I started. And now I'm going to get into some stuff. This next chapter is called The Gift of Time. And it starts off with a quote by Walt Whitman. I never appreciated Whitman. I love poetry, and you're going to see that each chapter starts with a poem. But each time that I would look for something that is exactly what I wanted to say, I'd come back to Whitman. Sometimes I'd have to go to someone else just because I had gone to him so much. But A Gift of Time. Happiness is not in another place, but this place. Not for another hour, but for this hour. And that's by Whitman. So I'm going to define what I mean by late fragment, and I'm going to scare the hell out of you. I'm going to define the late fragment as the time in life that follows everything that is supposedly significant. It is past career, past active retirement, past travel, and past volunteering. There will be important events in life, but they will involve members of one's family, graduations, weddings, the birth of a grand or a great-grandchild. With the exception of a late birthday or possible anniversary, seemingly nothing major is ahead. Babs, you're killing me. You're killing me. It came back on. Can you imagine? Poor Steady. Okay, so with the exception of a late birthday or possibly, you're right at my punchline. God. All right. With the exception of a late birthday or a possible anniversary, seemingly nothing major is ahead. Oh, wait. There's one final monumental event, your own death. So why would I start? If there's a more depressing and morbid start to a book, I've never seen it. Camus famously started The Stranger with the line, "Mother died today." But that is mother. This is you. What purpose beyond shock could be served by that sentence? First, it warns the reader that we are going to get into some tough, anxiety-producing stuff. Second, it defines the time in life that we are covering. Third, it introduces the reality into this final chapter of life that accepting the inevitability of one's death and allowing it to change our perception of time is crucial to making these late hours and days precious. There's no buzzer at the end. We fall into the great trap, the great deception that I'm going to live forever. All right. So here we go. Where does Late Fragment come from? William Carlos Williams wrote this poem. It is difficult to get the news from poems, but yet men die miserably every day for lack of what is found there. And that's by William Carlos Williams. Late Fragment. It's a poem by Raymond Carver. Carver is dying of cancer. He's only 50 years old. The poem, Late Fragment, is the last thing he will write. It is inscribed on his tombstone. He is known for the simple, direct, and sometimes raw use of words in his short stories and poems. He relishes being a solo character, disarmingly unapologetic for what he thinks and writes. I always knew that he was incapable of anything short of staring down his fate without pity or panic, simply accepting what he had wrought. I was not let down. The poem says, "And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so." "I did," he answers. "And what did you want?" "To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on this earth." Now, two things jump out at me. One is the slang words, almost a throwaway, "even so." Even so is that great ledger that says, was this a life that was worth living? All the positives and all the negatives. Even so, did you get what you wanted out of life? And then he talks about being beloved. Now, beloved is a different word. It's not love. It's a different word, almost an order of magnitude stronger. But one of the things, it's different for each of us what beloved would mean. It might mean that your family has worked and they've been a constant source of love. Or it might have been colleagues or associates that you had impact on their lives. Or it might just be some special person that has made it all come together. But it does always involve other human beings. And now that I've spent this last 2 years immersed in this Late Fragment, it all comes down to how important we are to each other, which is a central theme throughout the book. And so we're going to get to that. Raymond Carver. The book shares two major themes, the two books, okay? The first is time, the gift of time. As you know, Americans are living longer. In 1900, the average age of a person in the United States, the average lifespan, was 40 years. 1900. That same lady who lived for 40 years now lives to more than 80 years. Now, each person, the longer you live, the longer you're going to live. Okay? If you make it to 80, which I think there are a few people in here that have made it to 80, the average lifespan is now 89. So you get a 9-year jump. This is pretty good, right? Let's say like Aunt Ann, she made it to 100. The average lifespan of someone who makes it to 100 is 102. Now, I'm not interested in what the average lifespan of someone 102 is. Aunt Ann, I don't want to get into that, okay? There's a sadness to this, though, that for the first time since 1900, the average lifespan of an American has dropped. Okay? In 2021 and in 2022, the average lifespan dropped. Now you can say, oh, that's COVID. Okay? Well, but COVID hasn't had that impact because a lot of the people that died from COVID had already outlived that lifespan. Okay? What's happened though is fentanyl has taken 100,000 young people a year over the last 2 years, and this year is going to be even worse. And it has caused our lifespan to drop. Today in the United States, there are 100,000, just under 100,000 people that are over 100. In 2050, 27 years from now, that number is going to be 800,000. Okay, think of that. 800,000, not 100,000. So there are going to be a lot of us boomers alive in 2050. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about modern science. Now, I'm going to make a rash statement. Physicians have lived up to their promise of giving us longer life. Right? I'm going to say surgeons have done okay on that. Jesse, would you give me that? Okay. So, modern science has given us a gift, healthier lives, more time. We're examples of this here in the room. There's a catch. When will we experience that benefit? Okay. Will I get to spend more time with my children? Will I spend more than 4 years at UVA? That would have been nice, but my dad, he was going to bring me home if I did. Will my children be with me any longer? No. Those things are fixed. Our careers might be a little bit longer, and our retirement might be a little bit more active, but a great deal of that benefit is going to be in the late fragment. That majority of time, sadly, will come late, right where we are now. If one survives long enough, fortunate to avoid disease and catastrophe, the benefit will come late. The benefit will be tacked on to the end, a late fragment. Now, this late fragment is tough, okay? Because think about this, and I'm going to use boomers, but we're all in this really, but I'm going to use baby boomers. The people from 1946, born from 1946 to 1964. Early boomers, 46 through 55. And then late boomers, 55 through 64. Okay? We are the most successful generation in history. We have had the best education. We are going to live the longest. We actually have made more money than any group in history. Now, but one of the things that's happened is that, think about this, that tremendous bulge in population has caused us to have a different view of the world. Okay? It's the first day of school, the teacher would come and say, well, last year we had 12 people in the class, and this year we're going to have 22, and we're going to have an auxiliary classroom that you have to walk to. You went out for football, and there were 75 guys out there, and there wasn't a participation trophy. We got cut, okay? when you wanted to get into college, you weren't thinking, I'm going to go to dad's school and everything's going to be fine, like happened in the generation before us, not to take anything away from you guys that went to Davidson. I know how that was a cushy thing. You know, your dad got in, your grandfather was in, and then you got in. There's a great story about that, is that a woman wanted her grandson to get into Davidson College. His name was Chatsworth Osborne Jr. And she calls up and they get this letter that says Chatsworth's not going to get into Davidson College. And she is furious. So she calls the admissions director and she says, you know, Chatsworth's great-grandfather, his grandfather, and his father all graduated from Davidson College. And the admissions director said, well, Mrs. Osborne, let me point out, Chatsworth was in the bottom half of his class in high school. And she said, we knew he was not in the top half, but we had no idea he was in the bottom half. That's what Davidson College was. So this situation of competition had caused us to have this left side of our brain fired up. One thing that we know how to do is to compete with other people. We walk into a room and we look, how many people are here? What are they about? Okay? What are their backgrounds? How can I compete with them? Okay? Now, that's all fine for school and careers, but it makes boomers, and all of us really, that it makes success or a pleasant, rewarding retirement much more difficult. Because if there's one thing you can't do when you are in the late fragment, is still be competing with other people, okay? That needs to be gone, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So the whole process of our view of the world, our perception, our values, our goals, we can just take them and put them aside when we are thinking about how are we going to succeed in the late fragment. It's almost as if somebody or something has come along and says, you know what? I'm going to change the goalpost here. Or someone's saying, you know what? I'm going to alter the rules. The problem is, it's not even the same game, okay? We have to learn how to perceive new, and we're going to talk about this and how we do it, but it's a completely different game. In order to flourish in the late stages of life, fundamental changes in values and goals are required to remain relevant and central. The 2 years that I've been immersed in this, and I'm going to share with you what I've learned, this can be the best of times, and it also can be the worst of times. And it all depends on what the words in our brains that we select in order to determine how we're going to react to things. Okay? And there's a long chapter in the book about inner voices and about the choosing of those words. The book Late Fragment is a journey through the pitfalls and landmines of life. And what we're going to do at the end is to arrive at solutions, the resources we have to fight off the effects of long lives. We're going to go over that, but first I want to cover two things from the first book, and then we're going to get to that end on the late fragment. In the book, I weave through 10 mistakes that I see people make in their lives, especially in aging. And today I'm just going to take 2 of them. If you want the other 8, you have to buy the book, okay? But the first is I'm going to cover 2 this afternoon. The first mistake that we make is not being aware of the effects of aging on our brains. Okay? I'm going to read actually almost everyone in this room knows this person. I'm not going to tell you who it is. Some of y'all, he loves to tell everybody who he is, but yeah. RGB is a 70-year-old friend who frantically calls one afternoon. I am losing it, and I need to see you right away. My father had Alzheimer's late in life, and I knew this would happen. I got it. I asked, what has prompted all this? I was with you 3 weeks ago, and there was no sign that anything was wrong. I don't think this panic has been around too long. He says, 3 things have occurred in the past 2 weeks that have convinced me that I am definitely losing it. The first 2 happened on successive nights last week. I often wake up in the night and have trouble going back to sleep. I will go down to the kitchen and eat a bowl of ice cream. Now, I don't recommend that for insomnia, okay? But on this particular night, I left the freezer door open. Sarah came down in the morning and was obviously upset that I had been so careless. The killer was I did the exact same thing the next night. Now I'm beginning to doubt myself, and she is rolling her eyes and thinking, here we go. The third clue was the hardest. I had played golf with the same foursome Wednesday afternoons for more than 10 years. We were teeing off, and I realized that I could not recall the names of 2 guys in the foursome. These are my close friends, and their names had left me, gone. Get this, I had to sneak around the cart to look at their names on the back of their golf bags. Are you kidding me? I definitely have been slowing down since retiring. I'm not as sharp with names, and forget about technology. I lost the ability to turn on my TV with a new remote. I had to get my son to come over to turn the damn thing on. He put duct tape over one button that apparently can't be pushed or the TV can't be turned on. Okay. So we got RGB into the clinic and took a careful history, examined him, did neuropsychological testing. We sent off some lab and did an MRI of his brain. Everything came back normal. We did follow up with his difficulty sleeping. We were able to apply the best medicine, which was reassurance, and he went back to living his life. So I don't want y'all to, there are certain things that I don't want you to worry about, okay? And we're going to go over those. The first is names. I don't care in the clinic about names. And you know, you're in the dining room, and someone comes to the door, and you're next to someone, and you go, who's that person? I know them. I'm sure I know them. I do this all the time. I'm asking Mary all the time. She's better at names than I am. And so, and then you're eating and you realize, you know, you can't enjoy the meal because you're worried about not knowing that person. And then you realize when they come up to talk to you, they don't know your name either. It doesn't matter. And you all here can say, remind me of your name again. And sometimes y'all have to say, remind me of my name. All right, so names I don't care about. I have people say, you know, I've never been good at names. And then I say, well, why at 85 do you think all of a sudden you're going to get good at this? You know? All right, the second thing is technology. Technology, aging has changed. Technology has changed aging. Okay, and I'm going to give you an example. My grandfather probably finished the 8th grade. And if he did, he would proudly tell you, okay? He was an Irishman from South Boston, Massachusetts, tough guy, politician. He would walk in that door, he'd have on a Panama hat, 2-tone seersucker suit, and those 2-tone shoes, black and white, brown and white, and it was totally confident, okay? He would light up a room. And my brother and I were fascinated and just so grateful that we got to be around him. He loved battlefields, and he would take us to battlefields all the time. And I must have been at first about 8, 7, and my brother's 2 years younger, so he was 6. And he would tell us the stories about these battlefields. Unbelievable. He'd say the Yankees were piled up this high right here in the bloody lane, and we'd be thinking about dead bodies and everything. And then when we could read the signals, the post, we realized he didn't have any idea what went on in that battlefield. Okay, he was just making it up. But his stories were so much better than ours or mine. But he did take it too far when he got a Civil War battlefield mixed up with a Revolutionary War battlefield. That was about the end. But we hung on every word he said. And the problem for us now is that my grandchildren think they're smarter than I am because they're better on this phone and because they're better at technology. They will absolutely take it out of my hand and do it and hand it back to me. So technology has changed. All right, errors. One of the things that happens is we are going, as we age, to make more errors. Okay? We don't pick them up as readily as we have in the past. When you're doing your taxes or you're doing your checkbook, something that used to take you 20 minutes now takes you 2 hours and you still don't have it done. Okay? So that's just part of it. The older we are, the less. And also driving. That's where errors are so costly. So when you start to leave and then you think about where you're going, make a mental image of it, you drive slowly and you have really good manners. Okay? All right. Going into a room and forget why you're there. Okay? You're putting up a picture and you've got a nail and a hammer, and all of a sudden you say, oh my God, these nails aren't long enough. So you leave and you go down or go where you have your stuff. And when you walk in there, you say, wait a minute, why am I here? I have no idea. All right. So then you feel really bad about yourself. All you do is walk back into the room or go back upstairs, and there's the hammer, and you go, oh yeah, the nails. So don't grade yourself down, okay? And we all make we make big glitches, all right? So I see patients in their homes or in their facilities. It used to be Thursday morning. It's Wednesday afternoon, doesn't matter. But I go over, and y'all know on Park Road where the creek comes across there, where the Giant Genie used to be. Well, there's a coffee shop in the back, and I go in there and get coffee. And I have one of my caregivers has a kiosk or a store in that same shopping center. And so her husband, who's the patient, is sitting on a bench, and I come out with my coffee. And he comes up to me and he goes, I know you. I said, Mr. Jones, you do? He said, we went to high school together, right? And I go, no. I said, Mr. Jones, I'm your memory doctor. And he goes, you're doing a terrible job. and then I get in the car and I start to drive away. And he starts screaming at me. He says, stop. So I stop the car, and I probably have a little bit of impatience with him. I roll the window down, and he reaches up and grabs my coffee off the top, and hands it to me. And he says, you don't know how good this makes me feel. So what happens is that we're all going to make these giant glitches. We're going to have them. We're going to forget things. This lady in my building, she had a fender bender. She went to get it fixed and realized she had driven the wrong car. So, and he said, give me an estimate. He said, lady, your car looks fine. We're going to make those. So when Lisa Genova came, she wrote Still Alice. When she came, she made a great statement. She said, when you come across those glitches, hold them lightly. If there's something wrong, we're going to finally get it. But taking a life that's 90% working, and we're going to undermine it with 10% of what's not working, that's not good math. So we're all going to have these glitches. Just hold them lightly. All right, I'm going to talk just a few minutes about ways to protect your brain. And I'm only going to focus on a couple. One is, as we age, oftentimes the chemistry in our brain changes, and we develop depression. But when you are 25 years old and you're depressed, it's very evident. You can see body habitus is down, the facial physiognomy and everything, and you look at someone that's 25 years old and go, that guy's depressed. The presentation of depression changes completely with age. It might be, now you're going to see wives poking their husbands here. It might just be that all of a sudden you've developed irritability, that everything happens that you see negative and you can't get out of it, okay? The second thing is apathy. You lose the desire to do things. Or anhedonia, where things that you used to love to do, you've lost the pleasure from. These are not normal. People should not be down. They should not be apathetic. And they should not lose the pleasure of things, no matter how long they live. So if you're feeling those ways, you need to get help for depression. Depression is prevalent, although it does in some ways decrease as we age. Depression is a major factor, especially in suicide. The second thing and this is really important, the number one marker for cognitive decline in a lifetime is hearing loss. It's not arteriosclerosis, it's not genetics, it's hearing loss, okay? Now, Mary has been telling me that I'm not hearing very well. And I said, Mary, you got to get off of this. I'm hearing fine. She said, all right. And we had this deal. I had to go to the VA to get my hearing tested, and she was going to do something else that I asked her to do. And so I went, and I knew I was in trouble right away because I'm in the booth, and there's a rhythm to it. It goes beep, and you tell it. Beep, you tell it, okay? My left ear, I was okay. My right ear, it went beep, and then I didn't hear anything for about 3 minutes. And he comes, he opens the door and says, "You okay, Doc?" So I got to have hearing aids. And I'm going to tell people I really don't have suppressed hearing. I'm just doing this to be a good example for my patients. Sleep. This business that came in that says, people that are really dynamic and really smart only need 3 and 4 and 5 hours of sleep at night. We need 8, 9, or 10 hours of sleep a night. The longer that you live, the more sleep you need. Okay, and in any time that you're sleeping, your brain is cleaning itself through microglia, and also you're storing memories, because short-term memories are converted into long-term memories when you sleep, deep sleep. One of the biggest underminers of sleep is alcohol. I don't like my patients to drink every day. I don't like my families to drink every day. I like to have 2 or 3 days a week where you don't drink any alcohol. Okay? Our relationship with alcohol goes down. We can't drink as much, and its effects are enhanced as we age, and it's especially true for women. The last thing is destructive medications. Oftentimes, everybody, right now we live in a very anxious world. And the number one prescribed medications in the world are anti-anxieties. Xanax, Ativan, Klonopin, Valium, Librium. And these all, as we age, become very toxic. And they rob you of memory, they rob you of cognition. Now, if you're on them, you can't come off of them without supervision. For Klonopin, it takes me almost 1.5 years or 2 years to get someone off Klonopin. Sleep, all of the sleep medications are toxic to us. Ambien, all that is Xanax given at night. So I want y'all to be careful of those two things. All right, we're going back to the late fragment. What late fragment is all of the interviews and the reading and the research that I've done. And it comes out almost like, you remember the book was written by James Herriot, the veterinarian that wrote All Creatures Great and Small and all, whatever it was. And he used the stories of his patients or his families who brought animals to them, and he told stories. And that's what I do with Late Fragment. And I start off with a story about a lawyer that comes to us whose wife died 5 years before, and he is suicidal. Each one of the stories is based on a true person, or it's a combination of 2 people. And what I do is I take that story and I go through and talk about depression, loneliness, suicide, and what I do is I try to get you to be aware of what the landmines and the pitfalls are. And then we progress to where I show you what strengths you need, what strategies and what we need to overcome those pitfalls, okay? Who's in the late fragment? Who's in? People that are older, based on age. If you are old, you get a bid, all right? Now, one of the things about just being old is oftentimes you think you're going to outrun Father Time. And you can outrun him for a while, but he is going to have his say. He's going to show you in the mirror that you've got wrinkles in places you didn't even think you had, and your physiognomy has changed. Okay? He's also going to tell you that your voice is going to change. It's going to crack a little bit. It's going to get a little bit higher pitch. He's also going to tell you that when you walk a certain distance, you're going to get sore. He's constantly there to tell you about the ravages of age. Okay? Also going to tell you your balance and your gait is going to get imbalanced. The simple way to avoid having to deal with those things is to die young. Now, personally, I'll take the wrinkles and the soreness, okay? Because I kind of like this life. One of the things, though, that strikes me always is the people that have had healthy lives, who have been fortunate and lived to a certain time, they have won the lottery. The goal is to live a long, happy life. And when you've made it, why would you let the minor things, the aches, the pains, or just the age, the wrinkles, undermine having made it? And those are the people that have the least gratitude for the long life. If you take someone with a disability, oftentimes you'll see they'll never complain, especially people who were born with disabilities. Okay? They're in the late fragment. People who acquire disabilities, their mobility goes down. And what I spend most of the time is just trying to get them to where life is, to make their families realize that they are, that they need mobility, they need help getting somewhere, but they're still able to understand everything that's going on in real time. One of the things that I spend a lot of time with toward the end, I spend a lot of time with people at the end of their lives. And so the people that are at the very end of their lives, that are dying, are in the late fragment. And these are people that I've been with for sometimes 10 years, sometimes 8 years. And I'm almost always there at the end. And I wrote this. As I mentioned in the earlier chapters, I spend a great deal of time with patients at the end. This is the period at the end of a long, painful sentence. It is time. I'm not sad. If the family is assembled, attentive and calm, I have done my job. My hope is always that the family will be closer, more understanding of one another. The illness, this is dementia, this unrelenting, pitiless disease will have healed fault lines in families forever. The love that comes out of this turmoil and travail has the power to heal, sustain, and elevate lives. If they're at the bedside, the last gift from the soul turning away from us and toward their lot, if they have something to give, that gift, grab it, take it with you. You're going to need it. So I want to sort of end here with, how about, what have we got? We're only 45 minutes. I want 5 more minutes.
You're at 44.
All right, I'm going to 5 more minutes. Is anybody tired? Y'all can leave if you're bored. Okay. Success, I hate that word really about aging, but in this late fragment of life, the most important thing is dealing with loss. Okay? Now, the loss that came from the first book, Much Abides, and the loss of careers going into retirement, is that loss is very different. That's a loss of pride. That's a loss of importance. That's a loss of, I was somebody. Charlotte, there are in New York, people that are, we sort of celebrate billionaires in New York. Boston, I've never seen this, but people in Boston think they're smarter than everybody, so everybody celebrates really smart people. Philadelphia, it's supposed to be, oh, my father, grandfather were, owned a bank. In Charlotte, we worship bankers. What in the world is that all about? Okay? But we won't get into that. Okay. So the loss, though, of the corporate jet and all that stuff, not a big deal. Losses in the late fragment are consequential. They are the loss of a spouse, a child, or the loss of mobility, and you have to learn to deal with those losses. Okay? How we deal with those losses determine our relevance and joy for the rest of our lives. So we have to come to grips with them. Okay? Mourning the loss of what you had is too easy, and it prevents us from the hard work of making a life out of what we have left. Okay? All right. I want to go over one thing: the pitfalls, the loneliness, the depression, the feelings of abandonment. And so then what I do is I come back and look at what is it that we have that we call them, I call them grab bars, that we have to combat these feelings of loneliness and abandonment. What is it? Because they're there. I've interviewed countless people, and at first I was fooled. I got people that were telling me stuff, and it just didn't fit. And then I got better. I got better at asking, and I got better at understanding what the answers were. So what are the things, grab bars, all right? The first thing is that we can grab hold of is we've done stuff. We have been there. We are in line. We've achieved, okay? And aging cannot take our place in line. But we have to fight to keep it. Because, as you know, in many instances in the late fragment, you will disappear. People will say things like you're not even there, as if you're already dead. And you have to, through certain strategies, make sure that people know that you still count. You're still in line, okay? And one is resilience. Now, resilience is supposed to be an adaptive word, a noun that says that I can alter myself, I can adapt. That's not what I think it means. I like it to mean that I am not giving up who I am. I want to resist. It's almost like it's oppositional defiance. I am not going to give up the things that I've done, the person I am, and the effect I have on others. But it changes. It's not, and I'm going to read you something. I'm going to read you a story that's going to show you how it changes. The second thing is our brain plays tricks on us. And any time that something is put in our brain with anxiety, we don't want to go near it anymore. So it robs us of some of the most courageous and strongest times in our lives, because that's where we were tested. We were suffering. We were hurting, and we came through it. And when we did, we had anxiety over it, but that's where you want to go back to and say, you know what? That's the person I am. When I was tested, I measured up. But your brain doesn't let you go there because there's a little bit of pain. There's anxiety with it. And that comes with mentors also. We need to connect with people in our lives that supplied us with strength. Or, and I write a chapter about my father and about, I'll make you read the book to read it because we don't have time. So mentors, oftentimes we are disconnected from those people who gave us so much because maybe things weren't perfect. Maybe there were times when that person didn't measure up. So what we have to do is to have forgiveness in our heart, forgive them, and then go back to coming up with several examples that you put in your brain of when a father or an uncle or a grandfather did measure up. So you connect yourself with that strength that your family had. The third thing that I want to stress is that the role that we had as sort of the patriarch, the role that we had when people hung on every word we said, or that they wanted to know our opinion, those roles are gone, all right? T.S. Eliot wrote, "No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was I meant to be. I am there to swell a scene and to advise the prince." And that's where we are now. I'm going to read you, and I hope it's not too long, but it is a discussion I had with my grandson. Okay, and okay. All right. Let's see where I am. Sorry, let's see here. Okay, be curious, not judgmental. Supposed to be Walt Whitman, but actually it's Ted Lasso. Okay? Now, if you ever want to see an amazing short little clip, go on YouTube and look up Be Curious, Not Judgmental, Ted Lasso. It is dynamite, okay? It's about darts, right? About an after, there's a scene that I describe about Mary and I at Thanksgiving, and then I said, about an hour after the above fiasco, I was sitting alone with my grandson Chuck. The day before, he had driven his sister and me to the mountains for Thanksgiving. We stopped to have lunch in a small mountain town. Our waitress approached with a bright smile and enthusiastic recommendations. If you want banana pudding for dessert, you better order it now. The waitstaff ate most of it for breakfast. She was beautiful and enchanting. On her left shoulder was a large, colorful tattoo that went all the way down to her elbow. And on the forearm was writing stretched to her wrist. When we were back on the road, I mentioned that I found it difficult to understand how a girl so put together would have to have that large tattoo on her arm. It must have been clear to both grandchildren that I was saying, don't get a tattoo. But we got distracted by some other topic, and nothing more was said on the ride up. When we had that moment alone, I again brought it up. I said, help me understand how tattoos have become so prevalent. What is going on in the minds of young people to want them? What is it they say? He started with, I knew we were going to have this conversation as soon as that waitress came to our table. She was right about one thing. The banana pudding was out of sight. I'm C2 and he's C4. Okay, C2. I agree with that, but don't change the subject. What's with the tattoos? This summer in Italy, every young woman had some form of tattoo. Some huge, some small, but always there. C4, Grampy. I'm not sure I'm the one to explain it, but here goes. My favorite teacher, he teaches history, is also my baseball coach. He has a tattoo on his left arm. He doesn't try to hide it. He will wear short sleeves and it's easy to see. One day at practice, he told us the story about how he came to get it. It has to do with his father and baseball. He said that his father was his coach every game he ever played, from Little League to Legion. They won a national championship along the way. And he told us that baseball was everything to his father. He was sad to leave the players at the end of a practice or game. And he said he would end every practice and every game with the words, remember, baseball is life. His dad got cancer and was dying. He would spend hours with him just watching baseball games. And the last words he says was, son, remember, baseball is life. Coach told us the reason I am coaching is because of him. I had to have a sacred place to write the lines that were so sacred to him. So I wrote in a place that would always be near to me, my pitching arm. He said I'm left-handed, and that's why I have this tattoo. C4. I think that's a pretty cool story, tattoo and all. So one answer for why people get tattoos is to commemorate an important time in his or her life. Or like Coach, to remember a person who meant a lot to you. It really isn't that big a deal. Loss of a loved one, like a grandfather, would be an example. C2, if I croak, don't get a tattoo. C4, I probably won't, but no guarantees. It also has become a fad, almost a fashion statement, only permanent. What were the fads when you were in high school? C2, a tad less reckless, but believe it or not, long hair. The Beatles showed up, and soon everyone let their hair grow. Parents went nuts. You would have thought that civilization was on the brink. The fact that one short haircut wiped out the entire rebellion seemed to be lost on them. With tattoos, momentary impulsive enthusiasms are permanent. Believe me when I say I would not want the symbols of my thought and actions as a teenager etched forever anywhere on my body. C4. You know, Grampy, you know how Nana always rolls her eyes when you ask waitresses and waiters about themselves? When you say, where are you from? Or tell us about yourself. It drives her crazy. You told me in your self-defense that is the reason you want to know about them, is because everyone's story has something to teach us. It makes life interesting. I always like seeing the response from people that you talk to. They respond. They like being asked. They like telling you their story. They are young. You ask, what are your plans? They really light up when you do that. C2, you never backed me up when Nana was around. C4, chalk that up to fear and smarts. C2, what does this have to do with tattoos? Well, that waitress the other day was smart and funny, and she was really pretty, and I just knew you would want to know her story, where she was from, and her plans for life. But you didn't. I think it was the tattoo that turned you off. You missed her story and the connection because you reacted to the tattoo. We have had all kinds of weird waiters and waitresses. They were dressed funky and had crazy hairdos. That never stopped you before. Remember the young guy that waited on us with a hair bun? You had Sophie do a bun on you. It was hilarious. You were still friends with that guy, and he always waits on us. I felt sorry for the girl with the tattoo, and I felt sorry for you. There was a story there, and we missed it. C2, you were right. The tattoo put me off. C4, just saying, Granby, her tattoo may have been like Coach's symbol of some of a loss or something important to her. Who knows? I don't think that tattoo defines her any more than it defines Coach. C2, I get it. It's not about the person. It's about the person, not the tat. Well said. I started this chapter with a definition of relic, something that has survived but has lost its original purpose. The definition terrifies me, and the word remnant is added to make it even more intolerable. The goal is to stay relevant. We have to repurpose. The two situations that I have presented on the surface seem almost trivial, too subtle to make the point. But that is the point. The signs almost hints that the time has come to actively examine interactions with the world will be whispers, asides, not thunder. I am certain that there were countless clues to my changing role in the family. Okay, I saw the quote, "Be curious, not judgmental," and put it in the journal. It was attributed to Walt Whitman. I came across it recently when I was looking for something else. And I thought, what a curious connection. What does curiosity have with judgment? The conversation I had with my grandson, Chuck, about tattoos provided the shove that finally explained it. He pointed out in his soft, gentle manner that tattoos do not find those who have them, but those that judge them are defined by their contempt. The more issues, thoughts, actions that are spontaneously criticized and dismissed without curiosity or respectful consideration, the more isolated a person becomes. Their worlds become small, and eventually they lose the knack of connecting or caring. They are hopelessly tied to the past and what seemed to work in, quote, my day. They are relics. The antidote to irrelevance is curiosity. This is an increasingly complicated world. It shifts irrevocably every day. If my default mode response is always ridicule or rejection, that's a bunch of junk. I'm not doing that. That's crazy. My world gets exponentially smaller. If I approach odd or incongruous ideas or the people with those ideas with the intent to, or at least understand what they're saying, why they think that way, and how they do think these new slants will play out, then my mind and my world is expanding. I don't have to agree, but I do have to listen, try to understand. Curiosity coupled with passion and drive in a young man leads to success. Curiosity coupled with sincerity and tolerance in an old man leads to bonds of respect, relevance, and love. If I had been dismissive of my grandson in the exchange over tattoos, I may have jeopardized a path of influence by being curious to take on the tattoos and respecting his opinion will lead to confidence in him, trust and love between us. And he pointed that out. It's not about the tats. There will be a time to teach, but it will always follow a time to listen and learn. So I'm gonna stop now, and y'all can ask me any questions you like. But I enjoyed being here. Hope this hasn't been too much for y'all. George, you all right? Did you get that?
When is your book coming out?
I hope it comes out late summer. I still got some stuff to do. It's going to take me about a week to get this together. But late summer, I hope.
You mentioned the left side of the brain. What is the left side of the brain?
Left side of the brain is linear. The left side of the brain is where math is where that the left side of the brain is saying to you, what have you done lately that's worthwhile? How do I measure up? What does the world need from me? The right side of your brain is you. You know how you've told people, oh, I really would enjoy that. And your right brain says, you hate that. And your right brain is where art is, and it's also where you live. It's who you are. And we take that left brain and present it to the world, but that right brain. So in the late fragment, you need to listen to them because it's become a whisper. Okay, it's become a whisper. And now you get to do exactly what you want. You never had trouble doing that to start with. I know.
Where can you get the books?
You can get it, you'll be able to get it at Park Road Books. You'll be able to get it at our office. The first book you can buy today. But you also get it on Amazon, but most of the proceeds go to the Memory and Movement Center. And it's funny, but when you buy a book on Amazon, the author gets $4.07. You get a Park Road, I think we get $15. So it shows you.
Plus it's supporting a small privately owned bookstore.
Right, it is. Questions? Anything? One last thought is, in the book, I talk a lot about tribes. And I talk a lot about, and here at the Cypress, y'all are a tribe. And tribes, each tribe has its own values, and each tribe has its own goals about how, their own rules. But I have patients in every one of the retirement centers, every one, lots of patients in the retirement centers. And one of the things I wanted to end with was, what really matters as we age, in the last chapter in the book is called Just Between Us. And it's about the importance of human interaction. And human interaction, COVID taught us a horrible lesson. My patients, as you know, everybody was in their apartment and they were getting their food in, they were eating by themselves or just with their spouse. And the patients that I had that had mild memory loss and were highly functioning crashed. I can't test them now. A lot of them are gone because they lost human interaction. So it's very important. We are hardwired to connect with other humans. We need to listen to their stories, and we need to have them listen to us, okay? We don't need to be in the apartment. We need to be over here in the dining room. And we need, if you want to come and you're by yourself, and you see someone sitting there and they're by themselves, you sit down and you say, I'd like to join you. You all know this, but I have this friend whose grandfather was catching an early train out of Missoula, Montana to go somewhere in the early 1930s. At that time, the most famous man in all of America was a guy named Will Rogers. He was a sage. And he was sitting there by himself eating breakfast, my friend's grandfather. And a man came up and said, would you mind if I sit down and have breakfast with you? I hate to eat alone. That man was Will Rogers. So that connection to other human beings is what keeps our brains healthy. It is, we'll take pills, y'all will go to some, your hairdresser will say, well, you really need to take this pill because it's going to do all this great stuff. Well, and I say, I want you to take a pill and y'all won't take it, okay? It's great. So my hairdresser said, this is really good stuff. What about Dr. Edwards? Well, we don't do all these. So also, the culture of your retirement center is totally dependent on you being aware of others, what's going on in their lives. And then there's a peacefulness that comes from this, because then if you are out helping others and aware of them, then you have the confidence that when it's your time and I need other people, they'll be there people for me because I've done it. And that's how it will work. But it doesn't matter. Now, the pool is nice, the food is nice, the place is beautiful, but in the end, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference if you feel alone. So understand what I'm saying. Okay, thank you.